Chapter 4. Alien Among Us. Corin shuffled through the crowded hallways of Centauri High, his eyes darting nervously from one human face to another. The sounds of laughter and chatter echoed off the sleek metallic walls, magnifying his sense of isolation. His classmates flowed around him like a river around a stubborn rock, their ease and familiarity with each other a stark contrast to his rigid uncertainty. At his locker, Corin fumbled with the combination lock, his slender fingers awkwardly twisting the dial. The whispers began almost immediately, hushed tones punctuated by pointed stares and barely concealed giggles. He could hear their thoughts, snippets of curiosity and disdain mingling in a dissonant chorus that buzzed at the edges of his mind. Asterisk. Is he really from Sector 9? Did you see those markings on his skin? The question stung, but he pushed them away, focusing on the cool metal of the lock. Hey, alien boy, lost your spaceship? The taunt sliced through the murmurs, and Corin's heart sank. He turned to see a group of 3 boys sauntering towards him, led by Jack, a burly senior known for his mean streak. Corin's response was a mere whisper. No, just trying to find my next class. His voice carried a hint of an accent, his consonants sharper, the vowels flatter, a subtle reminder of his otherness. Jack smirked, stepping closer. Oh, you'll find it. Just follow the trail back to whatever weird planet you came from. The others laughed, and a flush of humiliation warmed Corin's cheeks. Before he could retreat, a voice cut through the tension. Leave him alone, Jack. Emily stepped forward, her expression stern. Her dark hair was pulled back into a high ponytail that swayed as she moved, and her eyes sparkled with unspoken challenge. Jack's eyes narrowed, his amusement souring. What's it to you, Em? Got a thing for freaks now? Emily stood her ground, her presence like a shield. I've got a thing for decency, something you're clearly lacking. She turned to Corin, her voice softening. Ignore them. They're just idiots looking for a reaction. Corin nodded, his throat tight with unshed gratitude. Emily's intervention felt like a lifeline thrown across the vast emptiness of space. He watched as she faced down Jack, who scoffed and eventually backed off with a dismissive wave. Whatever, this isn't over. As the bullies retreated, the hallway seemed to exhale, the tension dissipating like a storm passing. Emily turned to Corin, her smile warm. You okay? Yeah, thanks to you, Corin managed, his relief palpable. He was still unsure about many things in this strange new world, but one thing was clear. Emily was a friend. Come on, I'll show you to your next class. As they walked, Emily chatted about teachers, courses, and the unspoken rules of high school social life. Corin listened intently, his earlier fears momentarily forgotten in the light of her easy camaraderie. They reached his next class, and Emily paused, her hand on the door handle. You'll be fine, she reassured him, giving his arm a gentle squeeze. And if you need anything, I'm just down the hall. Corin watched her disappear into the crowd, her confidence and kindness lingering like a promise. For the first time since arriving at Centauri High, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could find his place here. Not just as the alien from a distant world, but as a student, a friend, someone worth knowing. With a deep breath, he pushed open the classroom door, stepping into the unknown with a newfound resolve. Chapter 5. The Gift of Thoughts. The holographic clocks that hovered above each classroom door at Centauri High flickered with the passing time, emitting a soft, sapphire glow. Corin sat in the back of the classroom, his slender fingers tentatively poised above a tablet that translated the day's lessons into his native script. The hum of adolescent voices buzzed around him, an undercurrent to the soft drone of the history teacher's monologue on intergalactic diplomacy. Corin's silver eyes, however, were not fixed on the holographic images of peace treaties and space accords that floated before him. Instead, they intermittently flickered to the left, where Emily sat. Emily, with her laughter like a melody that seemed to harmonize effortlessly with the background noise of their bustling classroom, had her attention devoted to the lesson. Her brows would furrow in concentration, then ease as she jotted down notes, her hand moving fluidly like a comet tail across her own device. Every so often, she'd bite her lip in thought, a gesture Corin found curiously endearing. Telepathy, in the bustling hallways and crowded classrooms of Centauri High, was both a gift and a curse. To drown out the constant influx of thoughts, Corin had learned to erect mental barriers, thick and fortified. But there were moments, fleeting and fragile, when he allowed himself the liberty of tuning into the surface thoughts of those around him. More often than not, his telepathic abilities picked up mundane anxieties about homework, trivial musings on the lunch menu, or the occasional daydream about the weekend. However, today, driven by a pulse of daring that startled even him, Corin gently nudged his mental barriers aside. He reached out with his mind, a tentative whisper in the vast shouting match of teenage consciousness, and brushed against Emily's thoughts. Her mind was a vibrant tapestry of color and emotion. He sensed her focus on the lesson, the genuine interest she harbored for history, mingled with a faint worry about an upcoming test. But beneath that, there was a warmth, a kind-heartedness that felt like sunlight filtering through leaves. Corin recoiled slightly, the intimacy of the connection sending a tremor of fear through him. What if she knew he was listening? Would she recoil in horror, label him a freak, or worse, pity him? Corin reestablished his mental barriers with a snap, his heart thumping audibly in his chest. He risked a glance at Emily. She was oblivious to his internal turmoil, still engrossed in her studies. The bell rang, slicing through his thoughts and marking the end of the period. As the students began to shuffle out of the classroom, Emily turned to Corin, her smile bright and unguarded. "Hey, Corin," she said, her voice a calm anchor in the chaos. "I noticed you seemed a bit off today. Everything okay?" Corin nodded, managing a small smile. "Yeah, just thinking about the lesson. It's a lot." "Tell me about it," she laughed, gathering her belongings. "Hey, if you ever want to go over notes or just talk, I'm around. I know history can get overwhelming." Her offer was simple, but to Corin it was a lifeline thrown across the dark waters of his loneliness. "I might take you up on that," he replied, his voice more steady than he felt. As they walked out together, a thought occurred to him, a risky thought, but one that ignited a spark of hope in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, he could share his world with her, not through the invasive whispers of telepathy, but through the simple, profound act of friendship. And as they stepped into the sunlit corridor, laughter echoing around them, Corin felt a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time since his arrival at Centauri High, he felt a flicker of belonging. Chapter 6. Shadows Resurface. In the serene quiet of his room aboard the starship Endeavour Corin gazed out at the sprawling nebulae, painting streaks of color across the void. It was a scene of cosmic beauty, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within him. Captain Rennick had summoned him to discuss something urgent, something that hinted at the ghosts of Corin's past, returning to haunt the present. The meeting room was sparse, functional. Captain Rennick stood by a holographic display, his weathered face illuminated by the flickering light of star maps and encrypted data streams. Corin entered, his heart drumming a nervous beat against his ribs. "Sit down, Corin," Rennick said, his voice grave. The captain tapped the display, bringing up images of distant galaxies, their stars a backdrop to darker deeds. "We've intercepted communications from the Delphorian sector. It's the slavers, Corin. They're still operating, and from what we've gathered, they may still have your siblings." The word struck Corin like a meteor. His siblings, thought lost, perhaps gone forever, were still out there, still suffering. A surge of determination flooded him, mingling with the old, sharp sting of fear and helplessness. But he was not that frightened child anymore. He was someone who could fight back, who must fight back. "How can we find them?" Corin's voice was steady, belying the storm of emotions inside him. Captain Rennick manipulated the holograms, zooming in on a cluster of space stations and derelict ships. We've pinpointed a series of raids originating from this location. It's a remote outpost, heavily guarded, likely where they're holding your siblings. Corin leaned forward, absorbing every detail. We need a plan, a rescue mission. Yes, and it's not going to be easy, Rennick acknowledged. He outlined the defenses, automated turrets, a battalion of armed guards, and the notorious slaver kingpin, Malachar Voss, known for his ruthlessness. The next hours were a blur of preparation and strategy. Corin and Captain Rennick pored over schematics, plotted courses, and simulated encounters. Each scenario was grim, but Corin's resolve only hardened. He would save his siblings, or die trying. In the midst of planning, Corin sought out Emily. He found her in the library, a digital tome floating holographically before her. Her presence was a balm to his spiraling thoughts. Emily, he began, hesitating as her eyes met his. They were filled with a quiet strength that bolstered him. I need to tell you something important. He explained everything, the intercepted messages, the slavers, the planned rescue. As he spoke, Emily's expression shifted from concern to fierce determination. We're going to get them back, Corin. I'm with you, she said without a trace of doubt. Her assurance was a beacon in the dark. Together they returned to the meeting room, where a small team of trusted crew members had gathered. Corin looked at each face, seeing not just allies, but friends united by a common cause. The mission was set. They would leave at first light, cutting across the galaxy in a silent charge towards the slavers' lair. The risks were immense. The odds were against them. But for Corin, the thought of his siblings enduring one more day in captivity was unbearable. As the stars wheeled overhead, Corin stood at the helm, the coordinates set. The engines hummed with pent-up energy, ready to breach the quiet of space with the roar of liberation. This was more than a mission. It was a redemption, a chance to reclaim a part of himself long feared lost. Captain Rennick placed a hand on Corin's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the weight they both carried. Let's bring them home, Corin. With a nod, Corin engaged the thrusters. The Endeavor slipped forward, a spear of hope piercing the darkness, bound for the unknown. This chapter not only progresses the story, but deepens Corin's character, showing his growth from victim to proactive hero. It sets the stage for the high-stakes action to come, reinforcing themes of family and resilience. Chapter 7, Journey Through the Stars. The cosmos stretched out before them like a vast canvas of ink speckled with twinkling stars, nebulae glowing with ethereal light, and distant galaxies swirling in silent majesty. Corin stood at the helm of the Starseeker *, Captain Rennick's prized vessel, his silver-scaled fingers tense around the controls. Beside him, Emily watched with wide-eyed wonder, her human curiosity untainted by the harsher realities of space that Corin knew all too well. Captain Rennick, a figure as stoic as the ancient statues of lost civilizations, reviewed the star maps, his voice a steady thrum against the soft hum of the engine. Our first stop is the trading post on Draylon, he announced, pointing to a cluster of stars on the holographic display. We'll need supplies and information. The slavers' network is vast, and breaking into it will not go unnoticed. As the Starseeker slipped into hyperspace, the stars stretched into lines of white light, the universe bending around them. The jump through hyperspace was always disorienting, a brief sensation of being untethered from time and space, but Corin had grown accustomed to it. It was Emily, experiencing her first warp jump, who gasped as reality snapped back into place, leaving her with a dizzy smile. Draylon was a bustling hub, a melting pot of aliens from across the universe. The trading post was a massive structure floating in space, its docks teeming with ships of all sizes. The air inside was a mix of exotic spices and the electric charge of raw energy cells. Markets filled every corridor, selling everything from rare minerals to ancient artifacts. Navigating through the crowd, Emily stayed close to Corin, her hand gripping his. Corin felt a surge of protectiveness, his telepathic abilities flaring gently to brush against her mind, soothing. He tuned into the thoughts around them, filtering through the mental noise for any hint of danger or information about the slavers. At a nondescript stall, hidden behind a curtain of shimmering beads, they met Jorlex, an old contact of Rennick's. The trader was a Delphorian, his skin a translucent blue, eyes large and unblinking. "Rennick, you old space dog," Jorlex greeted with a toothy grin. "What brings you to Draylon with such unusual company?" Rennick was blunt. "Information. We're looking for the slavers' recent movements. Anything about their operations could help." Jorlex's expression sobered as he invited them into the privacy of his cramped office behind the stall. "The slavers have been busy," he whispered, his voice a cautious murmur. "Heard they've been targeting telepaths specifically. High demand in the outer sectors. You're not aiming to tangle with them, are you?" Rennick exchanged a glance with Corin, who nodded slightly. "We have to," Rennick replied, his voice resolute. Jorlex sighed, running a hand over his slick head. "Very well. I hear they're gathering at Crix 8, a remote outpost in the Ombre system. It's risky, but if you're set on this, that's where you should look." Thanking Jorlex, they stocked up on supplies, including a set of cloaking devices for the ship, and left Draylon. As the Starseekers sailed away from the trading post, Corin looked out at the sea of stars, a trail of them guiding their path. Emily stood beside him, her presence a comforting warmth against the cold expanse of space. "Are we ready for this?" Emily asked, her voice a mix of fear and determination. Corin took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his responsibility. "We have to be," he said, turning to meet her gaze. "For my family, for all those enslaved, we have to be." With the coordinates set, the Starseeker surged forward, a lone vessel against the dark, a beacon of hope on a perilous journey through the stars.